Hello, welcome. Today is Wednesday, June 17th, about 3:25 where I am, the west coast of Northern California, and feeling a little self-conscious because I just dyed my hair pink. Had to deal with myself that as soon as I finished a video series that I was doing for my Beyond Boundaries program, that I could celebrate by dyeing my hair pink. And so I finished yesterday. And there's a couple of adjustments I want to make, but I'm excited for my pink hair. So welcome. Welcome wherever you are into my space from your space. And let me know you're here. I'd love to see hello so I can actually get a sense of who is here, who's live, who's listening, who is participating. And if you're watching the replay, you can just jump on and let me know you're here for the replay so that I know still who's part of the conversation, even if it's not live. It's always welcome, always valuable to be part of the conversation, whether it's live or for the replay. And yeah, in addition to saying hello and letting me know you're here, I do always love it if either, things I say make sense is always great, but also if it doesn't make sense, if you have questions, if you're curious about how this applies to your particular life, or if you think it doesn't, if you have a different experience in life, I always think that's valuable too. Let's expand the conversation, even though the way that this is set up is I'm the only one who gets to talk. So I've been thinking about this a lot. I mean, this stems from, my basically 20 years of exploring, discovering, practicing, teaching authentic relating, and, another 10 years of working with people in the area of intimate relationships, community building, continuing to work with authentic relating. And then lately, this question around listening and engaging in conversation in a way that creates connection or understanding, it's really up. It's up absolutely present time around the topic of racism and social justice in the United States and elsewhere in the world. And then in particular, that comes up in the social media sphere. And I think I got to really percolating on this recently when this is kind of just the context that I want to set up for. I have 4 simple steps listening to understand. But I posted something pretty strongly worded the other day. It was basically a meme. And then I added some words to it, but the meme says, there are a lot of things we can agree on and still remain friends. Racism isn't one of them. Oh no, this wasn't the thing I posted. What did I post? It was something about the correlation between people I saw speaking out really, really strongly against shelter-in-place measures, but who I had not seen say a word about curfews that were placed after the protests in the United States. That's what it was. And somebody that I don't know jumped on the thread and basically accused me of being really self-serving. And anyway, this thing, and then there was a little bit of a back and forth, and then somebody that I do know hopped on, and ultimately when I was in dialogue with this person, what they were saying was that they didn't see a lot of listening. And I was checking. I said, you didn't see a lot of listening in my post, in the comments. And they basically said, I didn't see a lot of listening from anybody. And I just stepped back. And they were basically reflecting that the capacity to, especially in moments of challenge or intensity, and being able to listen and see where the other person might be right and get curious with something they had actually learned from me and with me in different learning environments. And so it was noteworthy of that to them to see that it also didn't seem like I was bringing a lot of curiosity and listening. And so the kind of the context I want to set for how I want to talk about this is actually that I don't believe that listening to understand is an obligation. I actually, I think that I almost wanted to put this as a pre-step. So I came up with like these 4 steps for listening to understand. And then there's this pre-step, which I would call consent. And what I mean by consent is I can always listen to understand. Like I don't have to ask someone, can I understand you more? I can just begin to engage, and then they get to choose whether they actually want to share with me, whether they want to answer my question, but if they're sharing, right? If there's a person either live, like one-on-one like this, or, someone I know, or a family member, or in conversation, or even on social media, I always have the opportunity to listen to understand, but I need to choose whether I consent to that myself. So my engagement in that in some way is explicit consent, but I think it's important that we actually take the time to go, do I want to do that now? Do I want to do that with this person? Do I want to do that here? Do I want to do that about this topic? And then there's, beyond do I want to do that, some of the questions of do I want to do that now? Do I want to do that here? They bring in the question of consent around, am I resourced enough to do that now? Like I may want to do that now, but can I? Do I actually have the capacity to do that here, to do that now, to do that with that person, to do that around this topic? And I believe that this is like a whole other sort of layer, but it's really important to bring in is like we actually have to be honest with ourselves about whether on both fronts, because it's actually also okay to just like, yeah, I don't want to. I'm not interested in listening to understand with this person or about this topic or in this place or at this time. Like, no, I actually just don't want to. And then, like I said, you can also want to, like, yeah, in the abstract, I want to, I like that. And I'm not resourced enough. I don't have the time. I'm in my own intense response. I didn't sleep well last night. I'm too passionate about this topic. I want to be understood, which is a piece I'm going to get into about this. But, and I was really thinking about this in terms of that post, because I thought like me just posting this and somebody responding with a comment on my post actually I was not consenting to listen to that person in order to understand them. And I don't have to, I'm not obligated to. And so I'm sort of bestowing that upon you. Just because you post something on social media doesn't mean that you are obligated to be available to engage with everyone who responds from a place of listening to understand. You actually just don't have to. So it's important internally to make that choice. Like, do I want to do that here? Now, if we want that from somebody, I do believe we need to ask for consent. I would like to share something with you and I would like you to listen to me in order to understand, can you do that? Sometimes you can say that explicitly and people understand what you mean. Sometimes with people who might not know the language around that or really understand what you're talking about, you can say like, hey, I want to share something with you. And I would love it if you could just listen to me for 5 minutes. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to listen to me and only ask clarifying questions? Are you willing to listen to me and then not offer your own perspective, right? All these things, like if we want to be listened to, we need to ask for that and basically set it up so the other person knows what we're asking for and has the capacity to say yes or no before we go like, why didn't they listen to me? Or why, like I wanted to be understood and they didn't do that. Or, then they started telling me their opinion. And when we haven't really asked, like, are you available only to listen to me or to listen to me in a way to be understood? Is there anything that you need in order to listen to me, and attempt to understand my perspective, my opinion, where I'm coming from, what I'm wanting, so that the other person actually has that capacity to give consent. Yes, I totally am available to listen to you. Or yes, I want to listen to you and not right now. Or I don't know if I know how to do that. Can you give me some pointers? Or no, I'm actually not available. Or I only have 5 minutes. Is that enough time? Or, right, all of these things. These are the layers of consent. So I think it's important to remember that we are not obligated to listen to understand, and neither are other people obligated to listen to us to understand. That those are places where we get to give consent, and we need to set it up so that others can actually give consent. And then this is the piece I was referring to before, which is that I believe, not that this has to happen in every conversation, in every relationship, about every topic, but often if there's intensity, and that can be, like I gave the reference to, it can be, current social events that are intense. If I'm going to listen to somebody in order to understand them about their perspective on racism in the United States, or police brutality in the United States, or the experience of being a Black, Indigenous, or other person of color in the United States, and I just want to understand. So it can be around things like that, or it can be in a relationship, right? In an intimate relationship, this happens too. If I want to listen to my partner about why they feel angry about something, or why there's something that they want in our relationship, or why something I do annoys them, or right, in an intimate relationship or a friendship, that could be, or in a family relationship. If I want to listen in order to understand, oftentimes those things that have a lot of intensity, it's important to actually separate that conversation from a conversation where I might want to be understood. So again, if it's something around like an intimate relationship and my partner is really annoyed about something, and I actually want to understand why. Why are you annoyed by that? And they start saying like, well, da 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 about me, and I immediately want to go like, that's not true, and I don't do that, and I don't say that, and that's not why I said that. That's me wanting to be understood. So I actually think it's really important to separate it. And if I'm truly interested in listening to understand, to be in a place where I can step back and go like, even if what I think they're saying isn't true, it actually still is an opportunity to understand them. I'm understanding where they're coming from. I'm understanding their thought process. I'm understanding how they're hearing me or listening to me or seeing me. I'm understanding what they think what I said. I'm understanding what they're making up about what they think I said. And that if I really want to understand, if that's actually my intention, it's important that I set aside my need to be understood. And this goes back to the first piece, which is only do that if I'm capable of that at this moment with this person about this topic. If I can't do that, then I'm actually not in a place to listen in order to understand. And I need to, either do whatever I need to do so that I am resourced enough to do that, or just admit that I'm not, like let them know I want to understand you, but I'm also actually still feeling really defensive. Like I'm going to do my best, but the first place is actually being honest with ourselves. Like, oh, maybe I need to be understood before I can understand. Maybe I need to vent with a friend, or to just do whatever work I need to do so I can set that aside so that I can actually just listen to understand them without needing to be understood myself. And I want to make it super, super clear that it's not like you should never be understood. If you want to listen to understand that like you never get the chance to be understood, you have to always set that aside, like just get over it, do your work. I'm not saying that. I'm saying for the duration of that conversation, set that aside, do whatever you need to do beforehand, make sure you set up whatever you need to set up afterwards so that you're actually able to listen to understand. And the third thing I wrote down here, I basically have already said, but is really only do that if and when you can. Like, don't pretend. It really never goes well for anyone when we're like, I totally have the space to listen to understand, and then we immediately get defensive, or we're too tired, or we're distracted by something else, or we're actually we feel too strongly and too passionately about that issue, and we're not really willing to listen to something else that is intense. So, think about what it actually takes to step into a conversation. This could be, I've heard that it's very intense for a lot of white people right now to listen to the experiences of Black people in the United States of America, or to be maybe either told that they are a racist or that they're acting in racist ways. And so if I really just want to understand that person, Like then I have to let go of agree or disagree about that, defend myself against that, like, have them understand where I'm coming from, my perspective, or why I'm like that or not like that, or, why what they're saying is true or not true, is that I actually have to do whatever work it takes to step into that conversation to really understand, okay, what do you mean by that word? And what is it that you see in me that has you say that? Or what is it that you want me to understand? Or what can I, like, how do I actually listen to understand? Please tell me more about that. But I have to actually be in that place, and it serves no one for me to pretend I'm in the place to listen to understand if I'm not. So again, I'm always really curious, like, if this lands for you, if this doesn't land for you, if you're like, hell yes, that makes sense, or like, no, I totally don't agree, or what do you mean by this? It would be really great to just know, like, how's this landing for you? And I know there's a little lag here on Facebook, so always want to give you an opportunity to chime in. So going into now, the actual steps, the 4 steps for listening to understand, having given all the context about, number 1, you're not obligated to listen to understand. Number 2, actually separating out a conversation of being understood with a conversation of understanding, and really only doing this if and when you can, when you internally consent to yourself to have that conversation. The very first step is to listen. If you're going to step into a conversation to understand, now is that I want to understand just more about this person. I want to understand what their life was like. I want to understand why they believe that all white people in the United States are racist. I want to understand why my partner finds it so annoying when I pick up my phone when they walk in the room. I want to, whatever the topic is, listen. The first step is just listen. Let them talk. Don't interrupt. Don't defend, don't, listen. And then the next step is reflect back what you heard them say. But the first step, again, and this is the first step in a lot of ways, listening is really why it's important to make sure that you internally consent, because it can be so challenging. No, that didn't happen. Oh, I want to defend why I said that. No. And so actually the place to, like, let all that relax and just listen, like, what are they really saying? What can I learn? How can I more deeply understand this person? And I would say that's the first place. How can I more deeply understand this person? Not even necessarily the content, although I'm sure the content is really useful, right? How can I understand the content of what they're saying more? But even before that, how through whatever this person is saying and how they're saying it, how can I actually understand this person more? So those are the listening. Marshall Rosenberg, who created nonviolent communication, called those giraffe ears, that it was like really listening to understand, not listening to defend, not listening agree, disagree, but like just listening to hear them. What are they saying? How can I understand them more by listening to what they're saying? What it is that they want to share with me about this. And then number 2 is reflect back what I heard them say. It sounds like and especially starting with actually reflecting back. So you said da 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 da, like even in exactly the same words, because that way, rather than paraphrasing, rather than, from what you said, what I'm hearing is, or it sounds like you think, it sounds like you feel, but start with, so I heard that you're really angry about this. And then, did I get that right? So keep it bite-sized, right? Reflecting back, try to keep it bite-sized. And then, did I get that right? And they get to go like, no, actually, what I said is I'm angry about, Z. You say, I heard you say you're angry about X. No, I said I'm angry about Z. Okay, so I hear that you're angry about Z. Did I get that right? And give them an opportunity, again, like, yes, okay. And then it might be like, okay, and the other thing I heard you say is da 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 da. Did I get that right? Right? Like step by step to the best of your ability. I mean, if they went on and you let them talk for 5 minutes, it might be hard. If it goes beyond 5 minutes, you might be like, cool, I really want to hear everything else you have to say, and I just want to make sure I'm getting it right. right? So again, it's not to defend, it's not to agree to disagree, it's none of those things, but like, I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. So this is what I heard you say. Did I get that right? Or is that correct? Until they're saying, yes, you got that correct. Yes, you got that correct. And then there might be places to go, and it sounds like you're really upset about this. It sounds like you feel really hurt. But then really check, like, is that correct? Did I get that right? And give them a chance to go, no, I'm not hurt, I'm pissed. Okay, so it sounds like you're not hurt, you're pissed. Did I get that right? Until you get to that point where you actually have been able to reflect back to them what they actually said, and in some sense say like, and this is what it seems like you're feeling or wanting to communicate, or and until they're saying like, yes, that's right. And that's the point to really know, like, okay, I have actually understood at least the content of their words, and to some extent what they're trying to communicate with that. Now, this is the point where people often jump in and go like, okay, well, let me tell you my side of the story. So that's why I said at the very beginning that it's important to, first of all, give your own internal consent. Yes, I'm going to listen to understand. Number two, separate it from the conversation of you being understood. Like take this whole conversation and then be like, hey, can we have a conversation where I share my experience around that? Again, that's the place where they get to consent, like, no, and you're like, okay, that's a whole other conversation, but then they say yes, and you go, okay, great. So this is what's coming up for me around this. And to only do it when you really can. But that's why I say to separate those conversations out. Thanks, Alan just said you're awesome. I appreciate that. I'm glad. So again, step number one is listen. Step number two is reflect back. And each step of the way, right? Bite-sized reflections, and each step of the way saying like, did I get that right? Am I understanding you? Is that correct? Until you get to that point where they're like, yes, 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 you got it. And then, so after step two, again, that's where people mostly want to jump in with like, well, let me tell you how it is for me. And I'm sure you all do that in much better ways, but that's the general, even like, well, can I just share my perspective? Can I tell you how I experienced that? Those are just subtler ways of basically like, so I'm going to contradict you rather than continue to try to understand. Step number three is there anything else? Now, I didn't say this at the outset, but it is important to set a context around like, so we're talking about a specific topic, right? Because there might be many, many things. But, if I'm asking my boyfriend, like, why do you find it so annoying when ... like when I do such and such a thing? And I just really want to understand, like, what's going on for him? What does he see that I'm doing? How does that affect him? I want to know him more. I want to understand. Or if I'm asking a Black person, right? Like, so will you tell me what was it like when ... What was your experience? Maybe I just want to know about their experience of being Black in the United States. Maybe they were saying I said something racist, or I did something on Facebook they didn't like, or something like that. I really want to understand about this particular experience. Can you tell me more? And so holding it to that. So when I say, is there anything else? I'm not asking my boyfriend to say like, yeah, well, 3 years ago also blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, cool. So can we have a different conversation where I understand more about that? Or all the things I've done wrong in my entire life. But is there anything else about this that I haven't understood so far? Is there anything else that you haven't expressed? Can you think of anything else that you need to say, or that I could hear, or that if I understood, like I would just understand more about this particular scenario, situation, experience? And then wait, right? You just ask, is there anything else? And they might say like, I don't know. And you go, okay, cool. Well, let's just take a minute. Give some space for the, is there anything else? And then they say like, well, blah, 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 blah. And then again, we iterate back to step number two. Well, we iterate back to step number one first, which was listen, right? You ask the question, is there anything else? And then you listen. And then iterate to step number two is, oh, so what it sounds like another thing that's there for you is da 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 da. And they go, no, and did I get that right? And they go, no, I said blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. So actually it sounds like another thing that's there for you is blah, 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 blah. Did I get that right? Or is that correct? Am I understanding you? Until again, they get to the point of, yes, And you're like, oh, okay, so this is what I'm understanding. You can actually understand something. This is how you heard it. This is how you see it. This is the experience. This is what you see me do. This is what you hear me say. This is the way it impacts you. This is how you feel about all those things. And ultimately, you're iterating between step 1, 2, and 3. Listen, reflect back, and ask if you got it right, and ask if there's anything else, until you really get to the point where it's, either the time you set aside for this conversation is done, or you're like, okay, I've really heard a lot, and if there's still more for you, I'd like to set up another time, because I don't know if I can take in anymore, right? But you basically iterate steps 1, 2, and 3 until you get to that point, or where they're saying like, nope, I think that's all I got on this topic right now. I'll let you know if there's more. Like, they're saying no. And the 4th step really is to say, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that with me. And that's the place to then step back and metabolize it. The place to go personally with that is, where are they right? Where are they showing me something that I wasn't aware of? Where, even if I could defend myself and say, that's not what I meant, that's not what I thought, I don't think I did that, is it like, maybe they actually are right. Maybe unconsciously I did these things. My intention was to do this, but what if they're right, that actually in some way, shape, or form, I did these other things, or I said it in this way, or in some way I had this impact, and take time to metabolize these things. And that's why, like I said at the very beginning, number 1 is it's important to step into these conversations when you truly have the space, the resources, the listening capacity to really listen, and then step away and metabolize. And number 2, to separate the conversation where you are listening to understand from any conversation where you are seeking to be understood. So that you actually step back, and before saying, now you need to understand my side of the story, or that's not the way it happened, or, well, how come you didn't know that I meant this, or I've told you over and over that this is my intention, or I didn't mean to do it. Even the most well-meaning things, right? Like, okay, so I hear that I hurt you, but I really didn't mean to. And I was trying to do this, which again is wanting them to understand you and where you're coming from and your motives and your intentions. That's a conversation where you're seeking to be understood, not a conversation where you're seeking to understand. So my recommendation is, your 4th step is thank you. And then you take it back, and before you ask for a conversation to be understood, you do the internal work of metabolizing where are they right? Where might they be right? What have I learned about them, about myself, about possible ways that I could do things differently, about, just all those different things, right? You can journal about it, you can meditate about it, you can go for walks and think about it, you can, whatever it is that helps you to metabolize what they've said before automatically rejecting or defending against it, or needing your own position to be understood. And then there is always an opportunity to come back and say, hey, I would love for you to listen to me about my experience around this. And that's a separate conversation. So I do want to just end with reminding people that we are under no obligation to listen to understand. Now, it will limit the intimacy of our relationships. The relationships in which we're unwilling to listen to understand will be limited in their intimacy. But like the story I said at the very beginning, I don't know that it serves for me to listen to understand for every stranger that comes onto my Facebook feed and decides to argue with whatever I shared on Facebook. I did not necessarily step in to say, like, okay, I'd really love to understand your opinion. That may or may not be the best use of my time, energy, resources. I may not want to do it. I may simply not have it to give. With my partner, with my children, with my family, with the people who I truly care about and respect in my life, it still isn't every single conversation. There are times with my children where I'm just like, nope, you're going to listen to me, and like that's how it's going to go right now. And then I'll often step back into like, okay, I'd really love to understand what happened there, when I have the time, when I have the space, when I'm resourced enough. And sometimes, again, just as a human being, sometimes we got to just make that space and time and attention right then. And that's where a lot of the other tools that I talk about a lot coming, you know, like where can we just call on our resourcefulness in the moment, even though we didn't think we were stepping into a 30-minute conversation to understand, you know, like what happened for my son when he shot the water gun right into the house, you know. But for the for developing our relationship, for actually cultivating true connection, intimacy, and understanding between us, rather than just yelling at him and taking the water gun away and, you know, and addressing it later, like it's actually important that I just like pull on those resources to have that conversation now. Sometimes someone may bring something to us in a moment where we didn't expect that we were going to have a conversation where we could listen to understand, but there's someone we care about, there's someone we respect, and they're bringing, you know, they're bringing an important piece of information to our awareness. And it's like, oh, I don't know when I'm going to get this opportunity again. You know what? I'm going to set my other thoughts aside. I'm going to set my defensiveness aside. I'm going to set something aside so that I actually can take the time to listen in this moment, because this person matters to me, because this topic matters to me, because what they're bringing, you know, the way I can tell they're bringing something heartfelt to me, whether they're doing it in the best possible way or not. And I guess the very, very last thing I'll say is this is truly a choice. And we actually have, again, I'm going to go right back to the beginning. We're never obligated to do this, but we actually do have the capacity to do this no matter whether somebody is like using the right language or not. You know, if somebody's being abusive and they're just yelling nonstop, it is absolutely not our obligation to just sit and like listen to understand. It may be, you know, honestly, my boyfriend never yells. So if he yells, I'm like, all right, something like this is a good moment, and I want to hear what he says. But that is not true for the, you know, like most people most of the time. And those might be moments like, okay, I want to hear everything you have to say about this, but I can't listen while you're yelling. You know, these are boundaries. Totally, like, to be able to set up our capacity to be able to listen to understand. But even if someone is using you statements, even if they're being accusatory, but it's within that realm that for you, it doesn't border on abusive, doesn't cross the line to abusive, isn't like things that you're just incapable or unwilling to receive. We are actually capable of listening to understand, even if the other person doesn't have like all the training, all the language, all the right words, all the right ways of saying things, all the I statements. You know, I posted something recently about a pet peeve of mine is when people say, I feel, when they really mean I think. But I can listen to understand someone if they say to me, oh, well, I just feel like you weren't listening to me. You know, I could correct them, which is not listening to understand. Oh, so, you know, you think I'm not listening to you and you have feelings about that. That is not me listening to understand. So even though that's a huge pet peeve of mine, even though I teach on and on and on about it, even though I wish everyone in the world would say I feel about emotions and bodily sensations, and I think about thoughts, if somebody comes to me and they're saying, they're talking in all the ways that don't fit into my little frameworks of language, I still have the capacity, if I choose to listen to understand, go like, okay, I'm going to listen. I'm just going to listen. And then I'm going to reflect back what they said, and I'm going to ask if I got it. Did I understand that? Is this what you said? Did I get that right? And then I'm going to ask them, is there anything else? And then I'm going to say, thank you, and walk away. And rather than defending against or nitpicking the language they used, I'm going to go, okay, where were they right? Where can that show me something about myself? What can I learn about this? In what way is what they're expressing actually, like, can I say, actually, that makes sense. I can understand why they experienced it that way, why they think that, why they feel that, how I had that impact on them, intended or not. And then if I want to come back and have another conversation, I can ask them about it. I can ask them for that conversation. So there you have it. 4 simple steps to listening to understand. Thank you so much for those of you who brought your attention live. Thank you to all of those of you who brought your attention in the replay. I still always love the questions and comments, and any place you want to bring your real life circumstances. How can I listen about this? Or what if they say something like this? It's a little clunky in Facebook comments, but I still love to engage the conversation. So, Melissa, hi. Thank you. I know I was hoping it was going to be a little bit more bubblegummy, but I'm pretty happy with it anyway. I think I might amp it up a little bit in a couple spots. And David said, it's not easy, but that's what makes it great. I 100% agree. It's not easy. And it's why, I don't know if all of you caught the very beginning, but it's why at the very beginning, I kind of harped on and on and on about that we are not obligated to do it, and that it's important that we make a choice to step into those conversations when we do. And then we go, okay, right now I am choosing to listen to understand, and I am not obligated to do that. So this is a choice. I can actually walk away. I can not respond. I can say not now. I can say another time. I can say never. All of those are choices. And when I make the choice to step in to listen to understand, then, I've set myself up, okay, that's what I'm here for right now. That's what I'm here for. All right. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I appreciate it. Keep on rocking. Ciao.